Good evening and welcome back to CB8 Speaks. I'm Allison Koff and we're back with our part 2 of our interview with the co-chairs of the Communications Committee of Community Board 8 with Will Sanchez. Thanks, Will. Will has lived on the Upper East Side for over 30 years. He's been involved with the Community Board for the last 10 years. He has served on a number of positions, including secretary for 3 years, bringing back the Public Safety Committee, serving as the co-chair to Dave Rosenstein on the Communications Committee, and also serves as the liaison to the Midtown East Business Improvement District. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So let's talk a little bit about CB8 Speaks. What's the history? How did we get where we are here?
That's a great question. As you mentioned, I joined the Community Board almost 10 years ago. 10 in June. I was actually a replacement for another community board member that couldn't fulfill the application. As you know, it takes a lot of time to do this. So when I started, there was a CB8 Speaks. It was under the guidance of Ken Mills, who was the co-chair, actually the chair of the Communications Committee at the time. Ken Mills was a very well-beloved and well-known Democratic person. He passed away a few years ago. And in fact, Ken Mills actually had this idea of Community Board 8 Speaks even before I got there. But I'm not quite sure what the history of that, but it's always been at Manhattan Neighborhood Network, where we are now. And so when I joined, Madeline Peel and Jonathan Peel were the public members of the Communications Committee. They had their own equipment, which was very cool, and they would record some of the forums with the 2 cameras. I remember when I did a public safety one on domestic violence, and they were there with the 2 cameras, interviewed everybody. I was very impressed because they did that with their own equipment on site. They only did occasional shows. Because it's very time-consuming to edit. So they never did a show unlike what we're doing today. Today we're doing in a studio. As far as I know, they never did a show in a studio. They always went out in the field. So I was on the community board for 2 or 3 years. As you mentioned, I brought back the Public Safety Committee, did a few forums. And Dave Rosenstein joined the Communications Committee, probably as a co-chair or as a member. And at some point, the Peels had to drop out. They had other commitments. And Dave wanted to continue CB8 Speaks. Allison, he must have asked me at least 2 or 3 times. And I said, no way. But finally, my wife, Monica, wanted to become a public member of the Communications Committee. And then Dave latched onto her. Would like to be help us revive or return CB8 Speaks? And she said, yes, why not? So I followed him here, and I never looked back. I just fell in love with the place. So great. We've been doing this show since 2008. Our first guest was David Liston, and we did it upstairs. This has 4 studios, and this is the requirements. Oh, well, I'll let you ask other questions about it, but I could go on and on and on, but I'll stop here.
What's involved with putting it on? How do you actually set everything up and get it from this interview or pre-interview to it's on the internet and shared?
Okay, that's a good question. So we're recording this now on a couple of media, and I transferred the media here to a hard drive, to an internal hard drive, because right now it's being recorded on a high-definition XD cam, and which is not standard equipment. Nobody has that at home unless they're a professional videographer or something like that. And then I take it, in my case, I'm able to take it home because I have the software, the editing software at home, and I can bring it up, and I can tweak it as necessary. So for this show, for example, as you notice, we didn't have an opening. We didn't have any music. So I'll put in the opening, you know, welcome to Community Board 8 Speaks. I'll put a little music underneath. So when the show opens up, you hear da, music, and there you are. And I might do a little bit of editing. For Community Board 8 Speaks, I try to do very, very minor editing, maybe make up a few fixes. But generally, what you see is what you get.
That's it.
And then, how does it get to YouTube? Well, after I'm satisfied with the program, the software that I use, and any software that you use, anything editing software, has the capability of creating a master program, or even sending it directly to YouTube to have a link. They all do. In my case, I create a master program, and then I compress it. You need to compress it. Anything on the web has to be compressed. So I use software to compress it so it looks really nice and tight. And then YouTube has an upload feature. So we have a channel on YouTube called Community Board, called CB8 Speaks. So I go to CB8 Speaks, log in through the Gmail account that's associated with YouTube, use the upload button, and I upload it. And it takes, depending on the internet connection, and I have a good one now, it takes less than 15 minutes to upload. And from there, we have a link, and we post that link in our website, cb8m.com. There's a little tab called CB8 Speaks. I go in, and I provide the link to that tab. And once I do that, it's automatically Twittered. So our followers on Twitter would know, hey, there's a Community Board 8 Speaks. They could jump on it, or they can view it at their leisure. So that's how it goes to YouTube.
Interesting. And backing up to pre-sitting at this table, how do we get more Community Board 8 members involved?
That's been my challenge for the. We've been doing this show for 6 years now, since 2008. I guess 7 years. It'll be 7 years in September. Remember, we did the first show September 2008. So initially, our thought was, okay, we'll interview the chairs of the various committees. And we've been very successful in that. We've interviewed every committee on the community board except for 2, the budget committee and the 197A. Not because we didn't try, it's just the scheduling didn't work out. Right. And just recently, a few years ago, we expanded our capabilities here in that initially only people that were certified with the equipment we allowed to do the hosting. So all the hosting initially was done by Dave and Monica because the 3 of us, when Dave got us together, got trained at the same time. Sure. And so since we needed somebody in the back room, that was me. So Dave and Monica would do all the hosting, and after a while, even though it's a monthly show, they got tired. Wait a minute, they got full-time jobs as well. Right. And Dave was going to school, and Monica was going to school and working. Oh my God.
How was there enough time in the day?
That's right. So only a few years ago, we realized that we needed to get more hosts, and so we recruited more public members. Ben Kalos, before he became council member, was a public member, and he did a few shows, which is great. And we invited other board members. We also invited other board members to be hosts. I said, you don't need to be certified. All you need to do is do the research. And Ellen Polovy stepped up to the plate. She's done 2 or 3 shows very successfully. But it's been a struggle to get more board members to do this. So I'm hoping these 15-minute segments will encourage board members to give it a try.
This is our official ask to board members. Join and get involved with CB8 Speaks. How did you get to this point yourself? Do you produce other shows?
Yes. Well, Manhattan, as I said, I was reluctant at joining in with Dave. Took him 3 times. And I followed. I said, oh my God, when I got here, I just fell in love with the place. I couldn't believe the energy coming from this place. I couldn't believe seeing the people here, but mostly older people. I thought it was going to be just a bunch of teenagers who were going to say, oh, no problem, that's easy. Okay, right, But no, these were people my age and older, and they were into it. So I said, this is the place for me. And so I took more training. So initially we took the training to work upstairs, which is the closed studio, which is, at the time, we only had 1 camera. Here we have 3 cameras. And as I decided to expand my knowledge so I could bring Community Board 8 Speaks downstairs to the big studios. And I took more training, and it's quite extensive. You have to go through, initially got to go to orientation, then you have to know how to work the cameras, then you need to know how to work the inside room, you have to work the robotics, how to work the control panel to do the switching. If you're going to have computer graphics, how to work the computer graphics. If you're going to have the teleprompter, how to work the teleprompter, how to work the phones. Some of the shows are call-ins. And so it takes a large commitment of time to get as far as I have.
I can imagine.
And then I decided to go further, meaning, boy, I'm not happy with just taking the show as is and putting it, because sometimes you need to tweak it. Sometimes initially we made mistakes in the lower thirds. You know, instead of saying Allison under you, sometimes we would say Will Sanchez. I'm like, oh, boo-boo.
Not that I don't want to be Will Sanchez.
That's right. And I don't want to be Allison. And so I take care of that in the edit mode. And so when I completed the training, the instructor said, now you could have your own show. I said, no, you don't understand. I'm doing this to help out, Community Board 8. No, you get your own show. That night, I realized what he meant. And I said, and that's how Gotta Run with Will was born, almost exactly 6 years ago.
Oh, my gosh.
And the idea of Gotta Run with Will, I said, this is a show about the running culture. And it's a weekly, now it's weekly, and I'm the host. It's a lot of fun to do. I just did my 100th show a few weeks ago.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's so exciting. All right, well, in closing, what do we have in store for the future of CB8 Speaks?
That's a great question. As I mentioned, we want to find more hosts, and I think we're on a good path in doing that in these 15-minute segments. Another challenge is finding topics to cover, because we don't want to cover electives. One of our more popular subject matter is to have the local electives, like we've had Dan Garochnik, we had Lappin, we had Kalos, we had Dan Court, we had Senator Kruger, we had Congressman Maloney. The only person we couldn't get, and it bugs me to this day, it was Borough President Scott Stringer. He would promise us, yes, but their staff was just unbelievable. They said, you can only have 15 minutes of him. It's a half-hour show. You can only have 15 minutes of him. So it's a constant challenge. So what I'm hoping is I get more help. Perhaps since you joined the Communications Committee, you and Sophia would come up with creative ideas in getting the word out. Come on, do the show.
Great. Well, thank you, and thank you for your 15 minutes today. That's been the second part of our two-part series with Will Sanchez and Dave Rosenstein, the co-chairs of our Communications Committee for Community Board 8. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Will. Thank you, David. And thank you to all of our community board members and all of our co-chairs and the chairs of the committees. Thank you.